Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to ed up on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Dr. Joe Salustio back with you on another episode here in the new year, because, of course, even though we're recording this in 2024, by the time it comes out, because we've got to celebrate the holidays, it's going to be 2025. I just recently came off of a 2-day in-person podcasting extravaganza, if you will, from the Middle States Commission on Higher Education annual conference, where I was able to record. I was able to talk to many colleagues across higher education about many issues, including what we expect from the new administration, how we regain the trust of the public when it comes to higher education, and what's this deal with the value of a degree and how it comes into question when the data says that degrees do have value. It's unbelievable. Another thing that's unbelievable is meeting my co-host in person. I've met him in person before, obviously, but I've seen him in person now a second time. And how I am one of the taller higher ed professionals out there. And people go, well, I've only seen you sitting down. And I go, well, it's because I'm always podcasting. You've actually never seen me in person, right? I have to remind them. But now I've seen this guest co-host twice in person. I swear I think he's probably 6'6". When I see him, I'm like, dude, you need to sit down so I feel better about myself. Ladies and gentlemen, he's Charlie Anastasi. He is the VP of Partnerships at Rise Education. Charlie, welcome back to the co-hosting mic. How are you?
I'm great. It was wonderful to see you at Middle States. And yeah, I mean, that's my one thing, being tall. So appreciate it. For me, that's...
Are you 6'6"? Is that accurate?
You nailed it. I'm exactly 6'6".
Yeah. I saw you. I was like, wait a minute. I don't remember you being this tall or that good looking. So, I had a whole moment going on, my friend. And young, just like, a whole midlife crisis that came out of that. Anyway, it's great to see you and great to have Rise Education as a partner of the EdUp Experience. Just remind our audience what Rise Education does while you have a minute before we bring in our guest.
Yeah, Rise helps colleges add new academic programs more affordably and more quickly through a model we call program sharing. It allows colleges to build degrees that blend most courses from their catalog with a set of 5 to 10 online courses through a consortium so that they can expand the catalog, grow enrollment, but do it in a much more collaborative and affordable way. And I was just writing the 2024 year in review, and so we had 65% more students year over year. We helped colleges start another 110 academic programs last year. So it was a great year, and we're excited to head into 2025.
Congratulations, my friend. That's great work. And we know programs. We know about programs, right? Some programs, we have a lot of them, by the way, in higher education. We have a lot of programs. Some schools, hundreds of degree programs, sometimes low enrolled programs, sometimes high enrolled programs. They come with fixed costs. We are always looking at how do we maximize? How do we make sure that we're being mission focused with these programs? What can we eliminate? What can we stop? These are all really critical questions that our guest is going to answer for us today. No, we may not get that detailed. And that's a lot of pressure. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get him in right now with the pressure. He's Dr. Frank Neville. He is the president at Millsaps College. Frank, welcome to the EdUp Experience. How are you?
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here and look forward to our conversation.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, you answering all those really hard questions. I think the point is this is a hard gig you got. It's a hard gig, but it is worthwhile and it's noble work to lead an institution. So before we get in to the hood, if you will, and pulling back the hood a little bit, tell us about Millsaps, where you are physically, who do you serve, and how do you serve them?
Attention higher ed leaders. Are you ready to transform your marketing and enrollment strategy? Don't miss Insights EDU, February 12th through 14th in New Orleans, the premier conference for higher education marketing and enrollment management. Spots are filling fast. Register now at insightsedu.com. Welcome to the era of the modern learner.
Let's go!
Ellucian Live is taking place April 6th through 9th, 2025 in Orlando, Florida.
You just made the list!
Get ready for an unforgettable experience at Ellucian Live 2025. Join visionary leaders from institutions worldwide as we dive into groundbreaking ideas, cutting-edge solutions, and transformative best practices that will ignite your passion for innovation. This is your chance to connect, collaborate, and propel your institution into the future. Do not miss out.
Let's go!
Do you want to get invites to special events? Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes episodes, and original content? Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and become a subscriber today.
Right. So Millsaps is a small private liberal arts college in the heart of Jackson, Mississippi. It has a very long tradition of producing leaders for this community, for this state, and for this region. The Jackson medical community and legal community is filled with Millsaps graduates, and we really focus on individuals who are internally motivated, who are leaders, who want to be leaders, who are excited about charting their own path, and we give them a personalized education that allows them to explore their leadership style and their professional journey.
You know, you come from a varied background in higher education, lots of great experience coming from, I believe, an ACC school, and one of the more innovative universities in the country. And that innovation, I think, is important training. I think you were VP or Senior VP of Strategic Initiatives and Chief of Staff there, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. Do you look at, do you go, okay, you know what, I kind of know what I want to do. I feel very innovative. I've seen these things scale in this bigger institution and maybe move to a smaller institution. Surprised? Not surprised? Innovative? Not innovative? What were your impressions coming into this presidency? Because you've been there, like about 6 months or so?
Yeah, 6 months, almost exactly. In terms of innovation, I do want to talk about that a little bit because I think it's really the key to delivering value for students, addressing the concerns that the public has raised about the value of college, and a lot of these other big picture things. So we can come back to that in a second, but the more immediate question of innovation in Georgia Tech and how that applies to Millsaps. Every institution is different, and so the solutions have to be tailored to your competitive environment, to your strengths, to your resources, et cetera, to your community needs. But what's consistent, I've found, throughout higher education is and should be principles. Right? And so if you apply consistent principles, they'll show up differently in different places, but they'll be consistent in their effect. And what I mean by that, I'll give you one example, is higher education is a service industry, and we all exist in order to deliver value for our communities. And what that means is different in different places. But if you have the mindset of we're here to deliver value, then you can start your analysis of what do I do in this place by looking at who it is you serve and what do they need. And when I talk about this, and I go further on it, I talk about the importance of being flexible as your community's needs change. In other words, the community around you is not a static thing. And if you as an organization become a static thing, and if you're a service organization, there is going to develop a gap between what your community needs and what you provide. And that's where institutions get in trouble. And this is where, going back to where I started with this, the importance of continuous improvement and innovation is absolutely critical to delivering the value that higher ed should deliver for its community.
You go ahead, Charlie. I see. I'm not going to stop you, man. You could take over anytime.
No, there's a couple of things that came to mind because one of the words that you used earlier was tradition. There's a tradition of leaders at Millsaps College, and then who those leaders are in the context of the community changes. And so I'm wondering, it's sort of just double clicking on what you were just talking about, but how do you think about that balance of tradition and continuous innovation and improvement at these institutions that are so old, and people think of them maybe as they were when they were there, and there's like competing constituencies and thinking about what is tradition versus the new.
Right. Well, this is where, again, you start with the community. And I've had exactly this conversation here is what are those things that have changed? Right. Now, to go back to the specific point that I made, there's a huge healthcare industry here in Jackson. And as the state capital, there's also a huge collection of law firms and, lawyers and various other industries. And so those things have not changed. And so we continue to help students prepare for law school and med school and lots of other healthcare careers, et cetera. Now, things that have changed, for example, are a declining interest in humanities as a major in general. So then we have to think differently about humanities as a subject. And I believe very firmly that studying humanities is a critical piece of any student's education. Right?
Now, listen.
Because humanities are about the human condition, right? And anything you do, any job you have, any business you go into, you're going to have to work with other human beings. And so understanding how human beings operate, our shared experience, the history of human existence, all of these things help you then navigate a human environment more effectively. So studying religion and studying history and studying English, studying art, are valuable in that they teach you concepts about human interactions and human existence that you will need to apply in any environment. But if the demand for majors in those disciplines is declining on a national level for reasons that are outside of Millsaps and other colleges' control, then you need to think differently about how you deliver those concepts and how you integrate those concepts into a multidisciplinary, broad-based educational experience.
Yeah. One of the things is I was just doing some reading on what you've been up to is you sort of talk about pairing this multidisciplinary liberal arts core with a core technical skill. Mm-hmm. And you're talking in that answer about thinking differently about delivering things like the humanities. Have any ideas in listening sessions or conversations with faculty started to emerge about how Millsaps might deliver some of those skills in a different way to future students?
Yeah. So I think most colleges and universities have some answer to that, and Millsaps has a current answer to that, right? So you have a core curriculum, you have distribution requirements, and you make a decision institutionally that we want our students to know a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and these two things, may be interchangeable in that they give you the same, say, critical thinking or leadership or whatever competency that you're trying to deliver. So everybody has some answer to this. I think what Millsaps does currently is quite good, and the proof is in the success of our alumni. But at the same time, I think there's an opportunity for Millsaps to build on this success and this historical strength. You talk about what's changed and tradition and what you do with it. This is a historical strength that still has value, but needs to be delivered in a different way, that's relevant in today's society and for today's students. And so, one of the things that we're going to be working on is looking at that core curriculum, but starting with the end in mind, right? So what are the core competencies that help graduates be successful, across the spectrum of activities that they might encounter in their post-college career, right? Whether it's law school, med school, working in a business, or whatever it might be. And there are lots of good data on that, things like employer surveys or lots of other things. And so what what we're going to be working on here is looking at those, identifying what are those core competencies, critical thinking, leadership, and then reverse engineering back through the core curriculum and saying, how do we deliver those? And then also, how do you measure those? Because I think, a lot of times what happens is the original idea of what you're doing, can get lost in the structure of what you've built. And if you don't have assessment, and if you're not thinking in a continuous improvement fashion about, are we measuring the right thing? Are we delivering the right outcome? Are we getting the right results? Then you can drift away, from the original purpose of it. So that's the general philosophy, that we are applying here, and look forward to being able to give you guys something more concrete, and hopefully a few months or maybe within the year.
Excellent.
I have to say, and I don't mean to call you out, Charlie, but I'm pretty sure at some point you said you were going to double click on an idea, and I think that's my new thing. I'm going to double click in on that. I'm not sure if that's the greatest or worst business term that will pop up every now and then.
I think calling someone out for business jargon is always warranted.
It is warranted,
but we'll circle back on that show.
Yeah, well done. If we can table that idea for now, Frank, I like what you're talking about. I like innovation, and I like the way you describe it, right? Continuous improvement. And one of my favorite questions I've been asking lately after so many interviews with college presidents, like you get these really good questions where you're going to elicit good stuff. And then as the industry changes, you change your questions, right? Because things happen. One of the things that's happening to us now as an industry is we are seeing tight budgets, right? Enrollment declines, maybe enrollment plateaus, exploring different academic models, but sometimes the fixed costs are not declining as fast as the revenue is. And therefore, college presidents today have to also address what we have to stop doing. What do we have to stop doing so that we can move our resources into what we need to do, or this innovation that we know is going to serve the future? Is that a conversation that you're having? And what does that sound like? How does that decision get made? Because you can't do everything. You just simply can't. There's not enough resources to go around. So what you stop doing also has to be in line with your strategy, right? But something that I think warrants conversation in these ages of higher ed. Can you talk a little bit about that? How you prioritize?
Yeah, everybody talks about we need to stop doing stuff, right? And then usually there's silence and people nod, and then it kind of ends there. I'm not a big fan of we need to stop doing stuff, because, just as I sort of alluded to with the reverse engineering from the outcome that you want, is I like to start with the things that we do want to do. And let's focus on those. And if you fill up your available time with the things that you do want to do, then, by definition, you make a decision about what you're going to stop doing because you don't get to it. And so the challenge...
Because it doesn't get addressed, you mean?
Because it doesn't get addressed. If you start from the top of your list, now the problem is twofold. I mean, just conceptually, and then I'll get to the practical application of it. Conceptually, it's the challenge of making that list, right? Because the list then becomes flat rather than hierarchical. Number one. And then number two, the discipline to stick to it.
To the list.
To the prioritization in the list, right? And this goes I forget what the framework is called, but you've seen the framework of the urgent and the important, right? And the urgent important box usually gets done, and the urgent unimportant box usually gets done, and the important but not urgent box is the one that suffers, right? And that's where institutions get in trouble. And so that dynamic, applies with this type of prioritization. But again, if as a leader, I've found it most useful again to rigorously, focus attention at the top of the list, and to tell people who work for me, don't worry about that other stuff, right? Or, figure out how to do that other stuff in a more efficient way, or give it to other people to do. And I think right now we have a tremendous opportunity with AI to do a lot of that routine stuff in a much more efficient fashion. And so one of the things that we started doing at Georgia Tech, and one of the things that we're working on here now at Millsaps, is going through and looking at administrative services and activities, and helping our staff understand where they're spending time. It's basically process mapping, right? And concepts that any student of business operations, in their MBA program would understand. But then using AI as the solution to it, like, okay, if you're spending a good chunk of time here, if that's where you get bogged down, then is there an AI solution that can help you do that more efficiently?
Artificial intelligence.
And in most cases, the problem though, and I see that artificial intelligence is a buzzword because I just heard it on the
Edip Experience podcast.
Artificial intelligence.
There we go. But the challenge particularly with administrative staff, is if you give them the tool, they don't always know what to do with it and how to apply it, because what you're asking them to do is substitute an artificial intelligence solution for a solution that's already in place, right? And they've figured out how to navigate that solution, and replacing it with something new has a transaction cost, has a change management cost, et cetera, et cetera. But if you just give somebody a tool and say, hey, use this, it'll make you more productive, usually nothing happens in my experience. And so helping people find their pain point, identify their pain point, and show them how they can reduce their pain and be then more focused on higher value tasks, and feel better about their job and feel less stressed. But the way to do that, unfortunately, we haven't figured out a substitution for a very labor-intensive intervention on a unit-by-unit level. So that's the opportunity with artificial intelligence, but it takes some upfront work to get there. It's kind of like the story of the person sawing with a dull saw, and you got to take time out to sharpen your saw and then get back to sawing.
Frank, with sharpening the saw, I'm curious, is that having one person be responsible for that and moving through different departments? Because I'm imagining what you just hit on. There's probably a lot of presidents who are going, oh, that process mapping would be so important. And I know, just to be vulnerable at Rise, asking people, including myself, to do their own work of where are you spending your time and keep track of it, and then figure out where the AI tool could help. It just always falls to the bottom of that list. And so,
man,
have you thought about, are there people at Millsaps who are kind of like the AI czar, or how are you trying to get people to focus on this so that it doesn't become the end of the list?
You just made the list.
Mark your calendars for Insights EDU 2025, February 12th through 14th. Insights EDU 2025 is the can't-miss higher education marketing and enrollment management conference of the year. We're taking over New Orleans with speakers from Google, Meta, Reddit, MIQ Digital, and top schools across the country. Discover how AI is transforming marketing and enrollment management, how to assess online program opportunities, and meet the demands of today's modern learner. Don't wait. Spots are going quickly. Register now at insightsedu.com. Welcome to the era of the modern learner.
Let's go!
At Lucian Live 2025, we're going to explore the magic of innovation. We want to imagine, believe, and achieve. It's happening April 6th through 9th, 2025 in Orlando, Florida. And we're going to explore technology, modernization, and
Artificial intelligence.
explore the latest technology solutions, discover industry insights, and make valuable connections as a global community. It's time to register for Ellucian Live 2025 at elive.ellucian.com.
Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content, invites to special events, and more? Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Do you want to get all this while helping to sustain EdUp? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and become a subscriber today.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So two things. One is just, again, sort of conceptually on everything you talked about process mapping, right? There's a very elaborate way of doing process mapping, very detailed way, that in an MBA class you get in trouble if you don't do. That's not what I would recommend here, right? This is the 80% rule is good enough will have an impact. Like, you don't have to be perfect. And the added benefit of trying to be, complete in looking at every little corner, it's just not worth the effort. So people, in my experience, know where they get stuck, right? It's what hurts. What hurts, What do you wish, you could do more quickly, or what takes up your time, or what don't you get to because it's time consuming, those things. And so it doesn't or shouldn't take a long time to diagnose those issues. But again, it's, for Millsaps, being a smaller institution, we actually have an advantage in that it doesn't take a whole lot of time to have those conversations and figure that out on an individual or small unit level. And so then back to the other part of your question, is I have had the benefit both of working at Georgia Tech on this on a strategic, level, and then also being, for reasons unknown to me, invited to speak on several panels about AI, where I'm always the least qualified person by far. But I've learned a few things and met a few people, and so we're relying on that network and that expertise to help us help ourselves through that process. Now, we have a number of people who are very AI literate and use it for very innovative things. Some of our faculty, some of our staff. And so having them be champions and having them be involved in driving this process is important. Another thing that's really important in higher ed, we haven't talked about the teaching and learning part of it, is we need to have, and this doesn't necessarily have to be on a national level, but certainly you need it on an institutional level. You have to have some general understanding of how you're going to use AI in teaching and learning. Because otherwise you get lots of dysfunctional situations whereby, faculty really feel caught, and like what's cheating, what's not cheating. And so that's another conversation we're going to have here where we just open it up. I've got some people who are world-class experts, who are friends of mine coming in to talk about that and help people think through it. And then we as a community, we as a Millsaps community will decide like, hey, what do we think about this? But the question that I'm going to ask people is sort of twofold. One is we need to have a very conscious understanding of what we expect our graduates to know in their head, and what they're able to do using technology and, other things, resources that are available to them. And that has changed dramatically over my lifetime. For example, when I was in grammar school, calculators were cheating. And then I think when I was in high school, calculators were required.
Are you kidding me?
And then, think of Excel spreadsheets, right? They were cheating for a while too, because they did complicated math for you. You could put formulas in there. And then, again, we can go on and on with examples, right? But the idea that what you need to know in your head to be, again, back to the whole objective of this is we need to graduate people who are successful adults in whatever they want to do, right? So being successful in 2024 is being able to use AI. You're not going to go into your first job and have your boss ask you to do a project and you come back 15 minutes later with it done and your boss say, hey, you must have cheated because you used AI. Your boss is going to say, nice job. Right? That was quick. And so we need to prepare students for that. And so already in the world outside of higher ed, what you need to be able to do in your head and what you need to be able to do using resources has shifted significantly just over the past several years. And again, if we're a service organization, if we're here to deliver value to our community and prepare students for success after graduation, we need to help them, one, understand how to use those tools in their discipline, and two, be able to meet that expectation, that societal expectation of what they need to be able to do in their head and what they need to be able to do with resources.
A lot of process mapping in all of that you talked about. And Charlie, I don't know if you know this, I'll tell a quick story. Frank invited me to do some process mapping, planning on his campus. And then he gave me feedback.
I like your plan, except it sucks. So let me do the plan. And that way it might be really good.
And I haven't since been back, frankly. But you know what, Frank, I joke, but if you think about what you're talking about, which I like it a lot because I've said it similarly on the podcast, the student is using AI coming into my university or college already, and they're going to be using AI 4 years from now, which imagine where that's going to be. So if you look back 1 year from now, you're going, well, we were just putting in general prompts and going, what is this answer? Wow. Now we're putting in complex prompts. We're looking at AI in products and services. So 4 years from now, the students coming out of the university using AI far beyond anything that we use now in a job where the person who's hiring them is going to say, get it done. Like, do whatever you got to do, get it done. Maybe you have to disclose certain parts where you used AI, but that manager is probably training right now on using AI in their job too, because they don't want to be left behind by the person who's coming out of college and knows how to use technology better than they do. Because you're not going to lose your job to AI, you're going to lose your job to the person who knows how to use AI better, which is going to be the future college grad. And then you start re-engineering that, to your point, and you start looking at curriculum refreshes. You look at curriculum updates. Sometimes take 2 years. Sometimes are very dusty. And you go, wait a minute, we got to update this for the world that exists now. And then you look internally a little further and you see that even down to the individual, our spectrum of adoption is like varied. It's, shades of the rainbow. How do you bring people along when you might have somebody that goes, I'm using AI to catch my students? Now you have a faculty member that says, I'm only using AI to catch my students. And you have another faculty member that says, I'm re-engineering every syllabi I have to include artificial intelligence in every assignment and making the student write a better prompt on every one to get him a better response. And that's learning. That's a pretty tough gap to close, isn't it?
It is. I think, though, this is why having a community conversation is the foundation of it, and helping people to a shared understanding of, again, why we're doing this, what value we're adding, because again, so much the purpose often gets lost in the process. And if you bring people back to the purpose, it's easy then, to reimagine the process. But I think as I mentioned earlier, the institutions of higher learning that are going to be most successful going forward are the ones that have the tightest innovation loop. Those that have, curricular review cycles that, are 5 years, 10 years. It's just, you're going to lose touch with the needs of the community. And for some places, it probably won't matter too much because they're insulated, from those pressures by resources and brand and size and those types of things. But for the rest of higher ed, which is the majority of higher ed, this is really going to matter. And certainly for students, it's really going to matter. So we have to think differently about how we engage in those innovation practices. And this is one of the things, in fact, I have a report on my desk right now that I just got yesterday from a faculty ad hoc committee on rethinking our academic reorganization. And, the charge I gave them was we need an innovation mechanism within the academic structure that is strategic, that is structured, and that is sustainable. So strategic in the sense that it's informed by the direction that we want to go, the value proposition that we're offering for students, our strengths, our competitive strengths, et cetera. Structured in the sense that, it's built into the controls over academic organization, things like, syllabi and programs and curriculum and all those types of things. And then sustainable in that it has got some organizational capacity such that it can happen on an ongoing basis. And so, our faculty have I haven't read through the whole thing yet, but, come up with some interesting thoughts and just browsing through this on how to address it. But ultimately, you can't have the innovation exist outside, top down, the president's, organizing these reviews on a periodic basis for this to work in 2024. And so that is going to be the answer on how to do it, is embed the innovation right inside the system, not have it imposed from the outside.
I like your style, dude.
Charlie, the one takeaway for me is how effective is my innovation loop? Like that's a big takeaway for me. It's almost a question you could ask universities. So what's the innovation loop look like? You know what? Speed is of the essence these days, isn't it, Charlie?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that I've heard a lot talking to campuses is, do we take a centralized or a decentralized approach to this? Because ideally it's decentralized. We've got these wonderful faculty, and part of the beauty of the model is that gives you so many different shades and hues of, different subjects across campus. But even within this computer science department, one person does it one way and one person does it another way. And part of the beauty of going through 4 years, the challenge with that model is when you want to make a statement like, let's embrace AI, you got to wrangle tons and tons of people. And so I've seen a lot of blended approaches. I'd be curious to get your perspective on this, Frank. One of the things that I've seen is like, look, we are going to create some new courses that are just about AI. And we've had the privilege of working with some of our partners on engaging in those AI literacy type courses, where that no matter what, a student who's going through that 4-year degree, whether we've worked with some colleges to embed it in their business core or to embed it in the gen ed, we know they're going to be engaging with those tools. So there's some level of centralization here. It's like everyone who moves through, this is a new general education core competency. But then I think, to Frank, your point, if that's not wrapped around with trying to get others to engage with it and whatever it looks like in their course, it's kind of got to be meeting in the middle from both sides. But I don't know, does that resonate, trying to kind of find the centralized and the decentralized solutions?
Yeah. So I think of it in terms of bounded autonomy. Right. So
you're killing me with the vocab here today, Frank. I'll tell you, you got to explain all this great stuff.
So the idea is, for example, in our case, right? So the responsibility for setting strategy, understanding our competitive positioning, thinking about our value proposition, and setting that course is mine, right? And my administrative teams. and we have that conversation with faculty and validate it and get feedback, right? But ultimately and I guess the board has the ultimate sign off on the strategy, right? So, but that's an administrative thing. So this is why I say the innovation mechanism, needs to be strategic, sustainable, and structured, and starting with strategic. Like, it can't just go in any direction. That's why I say bounded. It's like, this is where we're headed. And within this space, then, it's faculty creativity that's got to drive it. Because if it's administrator creativity that's driving it, it's not going to be well informed. It's a disconnect between the person who's thinking about it and the person who's delivering it, right? Which means it's not going to be probably done well. So that's why within the bounds of that strategic direction, harnessing faculty creativity, incentivizing it, supporting it, enabling it. And so part of that is setting expectations. And again, we're just sort of, starting on this journey. So again, ask me in a year and I'll have a much more specific set of thoughts on exactly, the things that need to be part of it. But in general, I found that asking the right questions is really, really important, right? So that way the faculty who are working on it are thinking about the right thing. It's just, for example, if you're designing a research project, I don't know how much you've done this, but you spend a ton of time thinking about your research question, tons of time, because it's so critical. That
you can't do anything else until you have it right. Let's be honest, right? It triples you.
Yeah. So because that sets your direction. And so giving the faculty those questions that are aligned with strategy and direct their efforts in the way that institutionally you've determined are the path you want to follow. But then if you don't harness that creativity, if you don't give them the autonomy to figure these things out, first of all, you're leaving all your human capital on the table. You're not leveraging it. Second of all, again, the disconnect between the person who's thinking about it and the person who's doing it, means it's not going to be done well. So that's in practice, obviously, that's a complicated thing, but that's the way I think about it. That's the way we're approaching it. And that's the way that I think you get that, both the strategic coherence and innovation at the same time.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, maybe.
I just wanted to say, you said bounded creativity. Is that the way you said it?
Bounded autonomy.
Autonomy. And I just imagined bumper bowling. Like, that's literally what I was imagining, like the ball just going bing, 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 but staying within the confines of all this space you can have, but you got to be within these guardrails. Go ahead, Charlie. So that's why you're a college president, why I'm podcast host.
I like the image. One of the things is I was looking at your background, it's just like really kind of taking it in a different direction for the end, is you have this really unique story of longevity and partnership with President Cabrera at a lot of different institutions. And you've dropped a lot of knowledge on us and these different frameworks and ideas. And I imagine some of that came out of the work that you did with him. And so I'm just curious, not trying to prompt you too much, but it was just unique to see that much longevity. Like, what have you learned from President Cabrera?
Well, do we have another hour?
Yeah, let's rock and roll. I got a lot of sound effects, man.
No, he is, one of the smartest people I've ever met, and one of the best human beings I've ever met. Having had a number of bosses, when I discovered a person, of his character and his capability, I think I was smart enough to know that this is a guy to follow and support and help. And so, so that explains the longevity. But, in terms of what I learned and what I absorbed, he and I are very different in many ways. We're very much the same in terms of principles and values, and that's why we work together so well. The way we approach problems, the way we, think about possibilities, the way we, our communication preferences are all very different. And that was very helpful to me, to be pushed to be different on things and to learn. And so I think what I learned from him, most significantly, is kind of the power of vision, and what it can do for a community. And he always sets expectations and sets goals that make people uncomfortable. And then people deliver because he believes in them and he supports them. And, so I think it's it's the ability to see the possible. And even when it doesn't feel that way.
Well, we want to be sensitive to your time, even though you just granted us another hour. Frank, I wouldn't subject you to the more amazing questions from Charlie and myself. But we do want to know what else you want to say about Millsaps College and what you see for the future of higher education, and close us out.
Now listen up.
Insights EDU 2025 is almost here. Join us February 12th through 14th in New Orleans for the most anticipated higher education marketing and enrollment management event of the year.
I like that.
Imagine 3 action-packed days filled with game-changing insights, real-world case studies, and a hands-on workshop designed to transform your marketing strategy and boost your program enrollment. Learn from speakers at Google, Meta, Reddit, MIQ Digital, and top schools across the nation. Network with industry leaders, exchange ideas, and discover the tools to drive real results. This is your opportunity to stay ahead of the competition and meet the demands of today's modern learners. Don't wait, spots are filling fast. Mark your calendar, rally your team, and head to insightsedu.com to register now. The era of the modern learner is here, and you need to be part of it. We'll see you in New Orleans. Are you going to miss Ellucian Live this year?
I don't think so.
Exactly. So you might as well register right now at elive.ellucian.com. Ellucian Live 2025, April 6th through 9th in Orlando, Florida. Do not miss it.
Want to accelerate your professional development? Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content? That's right, original content, invites to special events, and more? Do you want to get all this while helping to sustain EdUp? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and subscribe today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, at Millsaps, we are very, very proud to serve a large percentage of Pell recipients. And, part of that is a reflection of the community, here in Mississippi, and the relatively high poverty rates that surround us. But it's also a point of pride in the sense that education is the path. I mean, you alluded to this at the very beginning of the show. Education is the path to possibilities and options, and a greater, a greater set of material options as an adult. And the correlation between, family income, right, and a child's future earnings is unfortunately very, very connected. And in other words, if you're born poor in this country right now, the opportunity to do better than your parents is pretty low. And if you're born rich, the opportunity to leverage, the benefits provided by your parents is very, very great, right? And that's why the Gini coefficient in this country has headed in the wrong direction for the last, I don't know, several decades. But we are very, very proud, and we are going to continue to work to make sure that education remains the path to changing one's life circumstances. And I think there's a lot that we can do, but even more importantly than what we can do is the example that we can set and the story that we can tell. And this is the thing that higher ed, amidst all the rest of this noise, higher ed needs to focus on that. It needs to focus on bending the trajectory of people's probable life outcomes. And if you focus on that as the objective, I think a lot of this other stuff will sort of fade away because people will recognize the benefit of what education provides, which is the path from a life of constraints to a life of possibilities.
Yeah, I agree. We got to tell a better story. Charlie, what did you think of this episode, my friend?
I thought it was awesome. And just even connected to the last point, you sort of finished with President Cabrera talking about vision. And what an amazing vision that I'm going to take that line, bending the trajectory of probable life outcomes, I think is a wonderful way to think about, what a college should do. So I'm inspired by the vision and glad I got the chance to be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, more directly, I'm going to steal a ton of the things that you said and use them for my own benefit.
We got it. So I think we can put it on our LinkedIns.
Without giving credit where it's due. Well, we never plagiarize here at the EdUp Experience.
Hey, feel free. My strategy is to repeat stuff here until people start making fun of me and repeating those words back to me, and then I know I got through.
Surprise. Sounds great to us. And we here at the EdUp Experience, point of pride for us is to be able to give people the microphone to tell these stories about how we are going to continue to push this industry forward. I think we've done that today with my guest co-host. He's Charlie Anasazi. He is the Vice President of Revenue and Partnerships at Rise Education. You've heard his voice before. You'll hear it again. And, of course, our guest. No, he's your guest. He's Dr. Frank Neville. He's the president at Millsaps College. Look him up, because I think they're going to be doing some special stuff as they move forward. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd.